The dusty little town of Red Rock was quiet that warm afternoon. The kind of quiet that comes when everyone is either sleeping or too tired to argue with the sun. The streets were almost empty, except for a few horses tied outside the general store and two boys playing marbles under the only patch of shade. In the middle of that sleepy calm, a small cloud of dust appeared far down the road. It rose and twisted like a tiny brown tornado, getting bigger with each second. People noticed it slowly, one by one, raising their heads, squinting their eyes, and wondering who was coming. Cowboy Tom Reeves had been standing outside the local sheriff's office, leaning against the wall and wiping the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Tom was known in the town for being calm, polite, and a little too serious at times. He wasn't the loudest cowboy, not the fastest rider, not the best card player, but he had a reputation for being steady. Even people who barely spoke to him trusted him without question. He didn't brag, didn't make noise, and didn't pick fights. He just did what needed to be done and went home. That day, he wasn't expecting anything unusual. He thought it would be another plain afternoon, maybe followed by a quiet meal at the old cafe. But that dust cloud kept growing. Tom narrowed his eyes and pushed himself off the wall. The sound of hooves came next, soft at first, then louder and heavier, as if the horse carrying the visitor was bigger than usual. A couple of shopkeepers stepped out of their stores. The boys stopped their game. Even a dog lifted its head, tilted it, and then trotted to the other side of the road, as if needing a better view. When the figure finally came into sight, everyone stared. It was a woman on horseback, dressed head to toe in a wedding gown. Not a simple one, either. This dress was huge, overflowing with layers of white fabric, lace, and ribbons that flowed behind her like a long, snowy river. Her veil covered her face entirely, reaching down to her hands, and the sunlight made her look unreal, like a glowing shape floating through dust. But the most surprising thing wasn't the wedding dress. It was her size. She was enormous, tall enough that even sitting on the horse, her head nearly brushed the banner that hung across the street for the upcoming harvest festival. Her shoulders were broad, her arms strong, and the dress only made her look bigger. No one in Red Rock had ever seen a woman that tall or that powerful. The town had visitors from all kinds of places, but never someone like her. The giant bride stopped her horse right in front of Tom. The horse, almost as confused as the people watching, stomped twice and flicked its ears nervously. Tom glanced up at her way up and tried to keep his face calm, though inside he felt like his mind was racing in every direction. He had seen tall people before. He had met strong people before. But she was different. Not frightening. Just unexpected, almost unreal. She didn't speak at first. She only sat there, still as a statue, while the veil shifted gently with the breeze. Tom took off his hat out of respect, mostly because he didn't know what else to do, and cleared his throat. "Afternoon, ma'am," he said politely. "Can I help you with something?" She didn't answer. A few townsfolk whispered among themselves. Others watched in complete silence, not wanting to miss anything. The scene felt strange, like a moment from a dream, something calm but also full of mystery. Then, at last, the woman moved. She reached up and touched the veil lightly with her gloved fingers. Her hand trembled just a little. Tom noticed that shaky movement, and something in him changed. He stopped thinking about how tall she was, or how odd her entrance had been. Instead, he wondered if she was scared, lost, or trying to hide something. "Ma'am," he said again, softer this time. "You seem troubled. If you need help, you can speak freely here." This time, she answered. Her voice was deep for a woman, steady, strong, yet carrying a tiredness that made everyone listening fall quiet. "I need someone honest," she said. "Someone who won't run when the truth comes out." The words hung in the air. No one moved. Tom gently placed his hat back on his head. "You're welcome here," he replied. "Just tell me what you're looking for." She hesitated again. The entire town held its breath. Then she said the last thing Tom expected. "I'm taking off my disguise now." The crowd gasped softly. Tom felt his heart jump. He didn't know what she meant exactly, But something about her tone told him this wasn't a simple matter of a veil or a costume. It sounded deeper. Before he could think, he stepped forward and raised a hand not to stop her forcefully, but in a polite, instinctive gesture. "Ma'am, maybe you don't need to do that right here," he said calmly. "You're safe. Take your time." But she shook her head slowly. "No, I've worn this too long. I can't breathe in it anymore." Tom felt a strange worry rise inside him. Not fear, just concern. The kind that comes when you sense something big is about to happen. Something no one around you is prepared for. "Don't," he said quietly. It wasn't an order. It was a gentle request. The kind you make when you believe someone might regret acting too fast. But she didn't listen. With one long breath, she reached up, grabbed the edge of her veil, and began lifting it. The movement was slow, deliberate. Everyone watched, as if time itself had stopped. Even the horses stood frozen. Tom couldn't move. He couldn't blink. He felt stuck in the moment, stuck in the unknown. And then she lifted the veil completely, revealing the face she had been hiding. The crowd gasped. Someone dropped a basket. The boys who had been playing marbles forgot the game entirely. The sheriff, who had just stepped out of his office, stopped in his tracks. Tom's eyes widened. For a second he forgot how to breathe. The giant bride was not just tall, she was familiar. He knew her face, he had seen it years ago. In a different town, in a different life. When everything had been simpler. A memory he had buried deep, believing he would never see it again. Her real name slipped into his mind like a whisper. He froze. Not because she was frightening, not because she was strange, but because her return meant something big, something that would change everything in Red Rock and in Tom's life. And she looked at him with eyes full of a story he had not heard yet. A story she had traveled far to tell. The moment the giant bride lifted her veil, the town square felt different. The air became heavier, as if everyone could sense that the story behind her face was big, serious, and deeply personal. People didn't speak. They didn't move. They only watched the tall woman sitting on her horse, her veil now folded over one shoulder, her eyes steady on Cowboy Tom Reeves. Tom had not expected to ever see her again. Years had passed since their last meeting, and time had changed both of them. But her eyes were still the same. Calm, warm, but carrying a shadow of pain. Tom took a slow step back. Not because he wanted to run, but because he was shocked. Memories he thought he had forgotten came rushing back like pages of an old book being flipped by a fast wind. Before he could gather his thoughts, the woman spoke. "You didn't expect me, Tom," she said softly. Tom cleared his throat. "No, ma'am, I didn't." The sheriff walked closer, his boots crunching on the dirt. He wasn't sure if he should intervene, but he also didn't want to make the situation tense. Tom raised his hand slightly, signaling the sheriff to wait. This wasn't danger. This was something else, something personal. The giant bride climbed down from her horse. Even standing on the ground, she towered over everyone around her. Her dress made a soft, sweeping sound as it touched the dusty street, the long train trailing behind her. People stepped back to give her space, partly out of respect, and partly because they didn't know what she would do next. Tom took a breath and tried to gather his courage. He wasn't afraid of her size or her strength. He was afraid of the truth she had brought with her. Sometimes the past was harder to face than any danger. "What brings you here?" Tom asked gently. The woman looked around at the quiet town, the small shops, the people staring like statues. "I didn't mean to scare anyone," she said. "I only wanted to see you." She paused, her hands twisting the edges of her gloves. "But I didn't know how to come without hiding myself first. People judge what they don't understand." Tom felt something tighten in his chest. He understood that feeling more than he admitted. He had never been the kind of man who fit comfortably in every place. He worked hard, but he had secrets too, things he never told anyone. "I'm not judging you," he said softly. "I know," she replied. "That's why I came." A few townspeople began whispering again, curious and confused. But their voices were soft, like distant rustling leaves. The center of the moment belonged only to Tom and the woman standing before him. Tom gestured toward the quieter side of the street, away from the crowd. "Maybe we should talk over there," he said. "You came a long way, looks like." She nodded and followed him. Her long gown floated behind her with each step, and her tall figure cast a wide shadow across the ground. They walked slowly, side by side, though Tom's steps were much smaller compared to hers. When they reached a wooden bench under the shade of a large tree, she lowered herself with care. Even sitting, she was taller than Tom standing beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Tom finally found the courage to ask what had been bothering him since the second he saw her. "What's your real reason for coming here, after all these years?" She looked down at her gloved hands. "I didn't come to trouble you, Tom. I came because I needed a place where I could breathe again. A place where I'm not judged every second. I remembered you, and I remembered this town." Tom frowned slightly. "Why did you hide your face? Why dress like a bride?" Her answer came after a long pause. "I was running away," she said. "Not from people, but from a life that didn't belong to me. The dress, it was part of something I couldn't go through with." Tom's eyes softened. "You left your own wedding?" She nodded. "I couldn't stay there. Everyone wanted me to be someone I'm not. They wanted me to look small, quiet, gentle, and simple. They wanted me to hide everything that makes me different. They wanted me to shrink myself just to fit their idea of a perfect bride." Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. "I tried," she continued. "I tried so hard. I wore the dress. I stood still. I smiled. I walked where they told me to walk. But inside, I felt like I was disappearing." Tom listened carefully. He wasn't judging her at all. In fact, he felt a strange respect growing inside him. Running away from something that wasn't right took courage. "So you left," he said quietly. "Yes." She looked up at him. "I ran. I got on my horse and kept riding until the dress felt too heavy to breathe under. That's when I decided to come here. I knew you wouldn't turn me away." Tom felt heat rise in his face, though he didn't know why. He looked down at the ground, tracing small circles in the dust with his boot. "I'm glad you came," he said honestly. "But people here, they worry easily. They're not used to surprises." "I know," she said with a faint smile. "I didn't mean to cause a scene." Tom finally looked up at her again. "You didn't mean to, but you did." She laughed softly, a warm sound that made a few people glance over curiously. For the first time since she arrived, her face seemed lighter. Then her smile faded, and her expression turned serious again. "Tom, I came for another reason too." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He waited. "I need your help." The simplicity of the sentence made it feel even heavier. Tom straightened, nodding slowly. "With what?" She turned her gaze toward the open road she had arrived from. "Someone might come looking for me," she said. "Someone who won't understand why I left." Tom's stomach tightened, but she quickly added, "They won't hurt me. They're not dangerous. But they won't accept my choice." "So you're asking for a place to stay," he guessed. "Just for a little while," she said. "Long enough for me to figure out what to do next." Tom didn't hesitate. "You can stay here." Her expression softened. "Thank you. But," Tom added gently, "you'll need to tell the sheriff. He's a fair man, but he likes to know everything that happens in his town." She nodded. "I'll speak with him. And maybe," Tom continued, "you should change out of that dress. Folks will feel calmer when they see you in something simple." She laughed again, this time with real ease. "I agree. This dress is too heavy anyway." Tom felt himself smile back, something he hadn't done in days. He stood and dusted off his clothes. "Let's get you settled. You can stay in the guest house behind my place. It's small but clean. You'll be safe there." She rose from the bench, towering over him once more, but now the height didn't bother anyone. People watched her with curiosity, not fear. "Tom," she said softly before following him, "I didn't know if you would still care." After all this time, Tom paused. "I never stopped," he said quietly. Her breath caught for a moment, and though she didn't speak, the look in her eyes said everything. They walked together toward the edge of town, her dress trailing behind her like a curtain slowly closing on one chapter of her life and opening another. The town had questions. She had secrets. And Tom had memories he wasn't ready to face. But one thing was clear. This was only the beginning of the story she had carried across miles to tell. Tom led the tall woman, whose name he still had not spoken aloud yet, toward the quiet edge of the town. The afternoon sun had begun to soften, spreading a warm golden color over the dusty road, the wooden fences, and the old buildings that lined the way. Red Rock always looked peaceful during this hour, but today it felt different, as if the town itself understood that a new chapter was unfolding. People still watched from a distance, whispering gently but not unkindly. Most of them had never seen anyone her size before, nor had they ever witnessed someone arrive in a wedding dress, lift a veil, and reveal a face from a cowboy's past. Their curiosity was natural, but Tom made sure to walk with her calmly, letting everyone see that she was with him, that she was safe. When they reached the guest house behind Tom's place, she stopped for a moment and looked around. The small house stood under a large old tree whose branches stretched out like open arms. The windows were small and simple, and the wooden door had a gentle squeak from age. It wasn't fancy, but it had a warm, home-like feeling. "This place is peaceful," she said softly. Tom nodded. "It's not much, but it's quiet. No one will disturb you here." She smiled gently. "Quiet is exactly what I need." Tom opened the door for her, and she had to bend slightly to walk through because of her height. Inside, there was a neatly made bed, a table with a lamp, a small cabinet, and a clean window that let in natural light. She touched the wooden wall with her gloved hand, almost as if she was checking whether the place was real or part of a dream. Tom stood near the doorway, unsure if he should enter or let her settle in first. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. "If you want to rest or change out of the dress, you can," he said politely. "I'll wait outside." She looked down at the heavy wedding gown. "I think I will. This dress feels like it still belongs to a life I left behind." Tom nodded and stepped outside, closing the door gently. He leaned against the porch railing and looked out at the path leading to the town. His mind felt crowded. Seeing her again had shaken something inside him, memories, questions, old emotions he thought had faded long ago. Back then, years ago, she had been different. She wasn't a runaway bride, she wasn't wearing heavy gowns, and she certainly wasn't hiding behind a veil. She was the tall, brave girl from a traveling family. A girl who smiled like sunshine even when life was difficult. Tom had admired her strength even back then, but life pulled them apart. Now she had returned, taller, stronger, and carrying a story he still didn't fully understand. After a while, the door opened. She stepped out, no longer in the wedding dress. She wore simple clothes Tom had left on the chair inside a long shirt and loose trousers that were made for someone much shorter, but she made them work gracefully. Her tall figure still stood out. But without the gown, she looked more like her true self. She held the wedding dress folded in her arms. "I don't know what to do with this," she said, looking down at it with mixed emotions. Tom thought for a moment. "Maybe keep it until you're ready to decide," he said. "You don't have to choose today." She nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Tom. For everything." Tom cleared his throat, trying not to show how warm her words made him feel. "We still need to talk to the sheriff," he reminded her gently. "Just so he knows you're here." She agreed, so they started walking back toward the town. As they walked, Tom noticed how she moved carefully, respectfully, always aware of her size and the space she took. People stepped aside as they passed, but no one looked frightened. Curiosity, yes. Surprise, definitely, but not fear. Tom walked beside her proudly, making sure she felt welcome. When they reached the sheriff's office, Sheriff Daniels was waiting outside, arms folded and eyebrows raised. He wasn't angry, just cautious, like any responsible lawman in a small town. Tom tipped his hat. "Sheriff, this is, well, an old friend." Sheriff Daniels nodded slowly, looking the tall woman up and down. not with judgment but with careful interest. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "Tom tells me you're looking for a quiet place to stay." "Yes," she answered calmly. "I don't want any trouble. I just need time to think about my future." The sheriff scratched his beard thoughtfully. "We don't mind visitors, long as they're honest about their intentions. You planning to stay for a while?" "For now," she replied. "I don't know where else to go." Sheriff Daniels looked at Tom. "And you vouch for her?" Tom straightened. "With my life." "On." The sheriff smiled slightly at that. "All right then. Welcome to Red Rock. If anyone comes looking for you, I'll talk to them first. You won't be bothered." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you, Sheriff." After the sheriff walked back inside, Tom and the woman stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. Tom finally asked the question he had been avoiding since morning. "Why didn't you tell me your name earlier? After all these years, I wasn't sure if you were ready to say it." She looked at him with gentle eyes. "I didn't know if you remembered me." Tom felt something warm stir inside his chest. "I never forgot you." She breathed in deeply, then said her name softly, a name Tom had carried in his memory for years. As soon as he heard it again, his heart felt lighter, as if a missing piece had returned to him. They walked together toward the general store so she could buy a few things she needed. People stepped forward this time, smiling politely, offering warm welcomes. Even the children looked at her with wide eyes full of wonder rather than fear. One little girl approached shyly, holding a small flower. "Miss, this is for you." The tall woman bent down gently, her smile soft and warm. She took the flower with great care, as though it was something precious. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said. The girl giggled and ran back to her mother. Tom watched the scene unfold with admiration. She had a way of making others feel calm. Even though she stood taller than anyone in town, her kindness was natural, effortless. When they were alone again, she walked slowly beside Tom and whispered, "This town is kinder than most." Tom nodded. "People here value honesty, not appearances." "Honesty," she repeated thoughtfully. "I hope I can give you that too." Tom looked at her curiously. "You mean there's more you haven't told me?" She hesitated. "Yes," she admitted. "There's a part of my story I haven't said yet. A reason I left my old life. A reason I came to you." Tom's heart beat faster. He could feel the weight in her words, the seriousness hidden behind her calm face. "You don't have to tell me now," he said softly. "Only when you're ready." She looked relieved. "Thank you. I will tell you, soon." They walked home as the sun began to set, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks. The air was cooler now, carrying the faint smell of evening meals cooking in nearby homes. Tom didn't know what her hidden truth was, but he wasn't afraid of it. Whatever she had carried across miles, whatever story she had buried under that heavy wedding dress, he knew one thing: he would stand by her. Because even though she had returned in a strange and surprising way, she had come back. To him, and the real story, the part she hadn't revealed yet, was waiting just around the corner, ready to change everything once again. The next morning in Red Rock began quietly. The sun rose slowly over the soft hills, painting the sky with pale gold and gentle pink colors. Birds moved from branch to branch on the old tree behind Tom's house, and a calm breeze pushed against the curtains of the guest house window. Everything seemed peaceful. But inside the small guest house, the tall woman was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with her hands folded tightly. She hadn't slept much. Her mind was full of memories she had tried for years to forget. Now that she had found a safe place and someone she trusted, she knew she couldn't keep her secrets hidden any longer. She had to tell Tom the full truth. She owed him that. Tom stepped onto the porch with 2 mugs of warm tea. He knocked gently on her door. When she opened it, he could see the tired look in her eyes. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded but didn't speak. Tom handed her the mug, and they sat together under the large tree. The shade was cool, and the morning air felt fresh. For several minutes, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was thoughtful, full of unspoken understanding. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Tom," she said quietly, "I told you I left my old life because it didn't belong to me. That was true. But there's more." Tom turned slightly toward her. "I'm listening." She held the mug with both hands, staring at the steam rising from it. "My family has always been different. Tall, strong, people who stood out everywhere we went. Traveling from place to place was our way of life. You knew that when we were younger." Tom nodded. "I remember. But after my family moved on, I stayed behind in a town far from here." She continued. "I thought maybe if I settled somewhere, people would get used to me. I hoped they would accept me for who I was. But instead, they wanted me to hide myself." Her voice broke a little, and she paused before going on. "They told me a tall woman wasn't proper. They told me to stand smaller, to speak softer, to make myself invisible. And when a wealthy family in that town showed interest in me, they made plans for me, plans I didn't agree with." Tom's expression softened with concern. "Plans like the wedding?" "Yes," she whispered. "They said it was for my own future. They said I should be grateful. But they never asked what I wanted." She looked down at her hands, her voice trembling. "I didn't want a life where I had to shrink myself just to be accepted." Tom felt a weight lift from his chest. He understood her better now, not as a runaway bride, but as someone who ran toward freedom, not away from responsibility. "So you came here," he said softly. "Yes. I didn't know where else to go," she replied. "I remembered you, Tom. I remembered how you once looked at me without fear, without judgment. You made me feel like I didn't have to hide." Tom swallowed hard. He didn't know he had meant that much to her back then. "And there's one more thing," she added. Tom's heart tightened. "Go on." She set the mug down carefully, as though steadying herself. "The family I left behind might try to bring me back. They don't wish me harm, but they think they know what is best for me. They believe I owe them, as if my size and strength give them some right to decide my life." Tom shook his head gently. "No one has that right." She looked at him with grateful eyes. "I needed to hear that." Just then, a horse's distant galloping broke the quiet. Both of them looked up. A small cloud of dust appeared on the far end of the road. Someone was approaching fast. Tom stood. "Stay here. I'll check." "Stay here." But she rose as well. "No, Tom. Whatever is coming, I must face it." Tom didn't argue. He walked beside her to the front of the property. By the time they reached the gate, the rider had slowed down. He was a middle-aged man, with kind eyes and a tired posture. He wasn't angry, he looked relieved. He stopped his horse, looked at the tall woman, and sighed softly. "There you are," he said. "We've been worried." Tom stayed close, quietly observing. The tall woman took a step forward. "I didn't mean to worry anyone, but I had to leave. I couldn't stay in a life that wasn't mine." The man nodded slowly. "I know, and I should have understood sooner. None of us should have pressured you." She blinked in surprise. "You understand?" "We do now," he replied. "Your leaving opened our eyes. You're not a child to be guided. You're a woman with her own choices. We came only to make sure you were safe." Tom stepped forward slightly, just in case he was needed, but the man raised a hand gently. "I'm not here to take her back. I'm here to tell her she's free to choose her own path." The tall woman's shoulders eased. She hadn't expected this. She had braced herself for arguments, pressure, maybe even guilt, but instead, she found understanding. The man smiled kindly. "If this is where you want to stay, then stay. You deserve peace." She looked at Tom, her eyes shining. Tom felt his heart beat faster. "Thank you," she said to the man. The man tipped his hat, turned his horse, and rode back toward the open road, leaving behind a surprising sense of closure. When he disappeared from sight, the tall woman turned toward Tom, her expression soft and full of emotion. "I didn't think they would let me go so easily," she admitted. Tom smiled. Some truths take time to see. They walked back to the shade of the tree, but this time she didn't sit far from him. She sat close, closer than before. The silence between them felt warm now, not heavy. "Tom," she said gently, "I came here because I remembered how safe your presence felt. I remembered your kindness. And I hoped, maybe you remembered me too." Tom looked at her, his voice quiet but steady. "I never forgot you. Not even once." Her breath caught. "Do you think I could stay here? Not just for a few days, but longer?" Tom didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a slow, thoughtful breath. "You can stay as long as you want," he said. "This town is quiet. People are kind. And I'd be glad to have you here." Her eyes warmed with relief and gratitude. "That means more than you know." The soft breeze moved through the branches, making leaves flutter lightly above them. Tom leaned back against the trunk of the tree, and she rested her hand near his. Their fingers didn't touch, but the closeness was enough to make both their hearts beat a little faster. Life in Red Rock continued quietly that day. Children laughed in the distance. Women hung laundry in the sun. Men worked in their small shops. Everything moved as it always did. But something had changed. Something gentle, warm, and hopeful. That evening, as the sun began to set and colors stretched across the sky, she stepped out of the guest house and looked around the small yard. She breathed in the peaceful air and whispered to herself, "This feels like home." Tom joined her at the gate, watching the horizon turn orange. "You know," he said softly, "maybe it's not about running from your old life. Maybe it's about walking toward a new one." She smiled. "And maybe I'm not walking alone anymore." Tom's eyes softened. "No, you're not." Together they stood under the evening sky, two people who had parted long ago, reunited by fate, strengthened by truth, and ready to face whatever came next. Not as strangers, not as a runaway and a cowboy, but as two souls who finally found the place and the person they belonged with.